Good morning, traders, and welcome back to another wild week in the market. We've got a very busy week, and we're beginning the week with considerable political uncertainty around the world, adding to a little bit of pressure this morning in the pre-market. And yet we have a big week of economic data as we move into the mid period of the week. So how about we take a look at what happened overnight? First off, if we take a look at Asian markets did pretty well last night. It was mixed, but we had Australia, the Nikkei was up. Hong Kong had a really good day, up 548 points or 2.76%, while the Shanghai was slightly lower, down 0.05%. India was down. South Korea was slightly down as well. So a lot of back and forth there in Asian markets. If we take a look at European markets this morning, well, we're a little mixed here. There was some early bullishness, but they've kind of paired some of those gains. Right now, the DAX is down 0.14%, FTSE is up 0.35%, and the CAC is up 0.5% this morning. If we take a look at U.S. futures this morning, they're bouncing around the flat line. We have seen quite a mix here, but right now we've got the Dow futures up 0.05%. S&P 500 futures, however, down 0.11%, and NASDAQ futures down 0.25% after 3 straight winning weeks here in the market. Let's take a quick peek at what's going on in the oil market right now. If we take a look at XLE, well, XLE, as you can see, has been moving to the downside here recently, but oil's been kind of hanging in there. We've got oil futures right now up 87 cents at 68.07 a barrel. So keep an eye on those this morning. And then of course, if we take a look at Brent's also up 80 cents at 71.92 a barrel. Natural gas had a rough week last week, moving lower, but on Friday put in a little bit of a bullish candle there, trying to bounce back up. And now this morning we're looking at a gap higher with natural gas up over 16 cents this morning. So keep an eye on UNG, or you might want to look at BOIL or something like that. Some nice charts trying to move back up here in that market. When we take a look at precious metals here this morning, well, we've got precious metals showing some strength this morning as well. We've got gold moving up this morning, right now up $17.40 an ounce, bouncing off of this support level in an otherwise relatively short pattern. You can see this big old head and shoulders pattern here on gold, but getting a good boost up this morning. Silver's also bouncing this morning. We've got copper showing a little bit of a bounce here this morning and a possible break of a downtrend. So watch that carefully in here. We've been rallying here in copper, just slightly little lower highs, and now we've held this downtrend break with a little bit higher low. So watch that carefully in copper. If you take a look at platinum, it's higher this morning, in palladium bouncing back up from kind of a rough day last week, or rough day on Friday last week. So keep an eye on that. Looking at the crypto markets here this morning, well, after a major run to the upside, Bitcoin is showing a little bit of pressure here today, down at $1,908 a coin, or 1.91%. Ether is also having a pretty rough day, down $139 a coin, or 3.47%. And we're pretty much bearish on those coins this morning, cryptos here this morning. Now, one of the reasons that might be the case is if we take a look at the US dollar showing just a tiny little bit of weakness here this morning, but our bonds are moving just slightly higher. The 2-year bond coming in at 4.10%. 10-year at 4.14%, and the 30-year coming in at 4.36%. So what does all that mean for the day? Well, how about we settle in? Let's buckle up. Let's get ready for the Monday edition of the Morning Market Prep video. Good morning once again, everyone, and thank you so much for being here. I very much appreciate it. Let's take a look at these index charts, and remember, we want to do it without a bias. We want to be looking at these charts for what they are, not for what we want them to be. And what you can see here in the Dow is a bullish upside trend. Everything is looking copacetic here at the moment. We've made higher highs, higher lows, and now we're consolidated here in a very choppy period of time here in the Dow over toward that trend. So what we'd be looking for here is if we can get some bullish inspiration, we need to see a pushback up here, retest these all-time highs in the chart, and then of course blue sky above that. And we certainly have some data coming this week that could provide that. We'll talk about that in a moment. If we take a look on the bearish side, however, well, we also want to notice that we're right in here on this support. And if the bears were to find some kind of inspiration, well, we could threaten this upside trend. You'll want to notice that we have a gap below that we could move down into that if those bears find a little bit of inspiration. And that might raise a little fear in the market, considering the fact that we have been so bought up here in the market. If we take a look at some of the metrics out there, well, we're pretty overvalued. When we look at the S&P 500 PE ratio in here, you'll notice that we are quite elevated here. We're at 36.5 on the PE ratio of the S&P 500, which is 79.2% above that historical average of 20.4. And at the same time, we are running two standard deviations above that norm. And if we take a look at the Buffett indicator in here, Buffett uses a different measure of total stock market divided by the gross domestic product. Well, that's at 208%, which is well above 66.62% above the historical norm, and 2.2 standard deviations above that. And in fact, if you look at this chart, we're at an all-time high here on the Buffett indicator. So both of those metrics showing us a very, well, obviously very bullish market, but also a market that may be just a little bit ahead of itself here. So we'll want to be watching that carefully. If the bears do come in, we could see some significant pulling back in those charts. So let's take a look at our SPY, also showing a very, very bullish condition here. But one of the things we also see in this is kind of a long upside extension here. This is many, many days here with very few resting periods in here, just stretch, and largely due to the NASDAQ stocks, the big tech, are doing most of this lifting here in the market. It seems like we really have zero concern that big tech is going to be the driving force, or AI is going to be the driving force of the market. And it seems like any price is okay for most traders out there as we continue to stretch these big tech stocks into really high PE ratios. But we'll want to watch that closely, because if those bulls find inspiration here, well, there's every reason to believe we're going to continue to push on higher here and see new record highs in the SPY. So watch that closely. We will want to also consider the possibility with this big extension to the upside that if the bears were to find any reason to rest a little bit or to pull back a little bit, well, we could still move sideways out here to this trend, or we could find a little bit of price support levels in here on a pushback, come back here to test this trend, and then if that were to break, I would say probably down in here a little bit stronger area of support to be watching. Now our QQQ has been doing the majority of this lead in to the upside, and as we continue to pile into a very small sector of the market, those tech giants, AI related stocks, and you'll want to keep an eye on this. A big breakout here, every reason to believe we can push on higher. You can see we've got a bit of a gap up here trying to make happen this morning, so we could have new record highs at the open. And if the bears were to find any inspiration, well, I would suggest maybe downside right in here, push back into here, wouldn't hurt us at all. Dropping below there, we might drop into a little bit of a gap and come back into support and upside trend. And just remember, from this large extension, that is a possibility. You want to be watching carefully for that. And if we take a look at our IWM, well, IWM continues to struggle in here, and IWM could really benefit from a NASDAQ SPY pullback, because one of the things that we have seen when we're just really focused, centric into those tech giants, it sucks all the money out of IWM and it just can't get anything going. But I have to say, this continues to be a very bullish chart. Just this consolidation, we've been lacking momentum in here because NASDAQ has been drawing all the money out. And as you can see, little rest in here could still happen over to the trend, but if those bulls can find inspiration, well, we can see this area up here. We haven't been able to break out of this all-time high here in IWM that goes all the way back to 2022. That's that line there right there. And if we can get enough inspiration, then all-time highs in IWM could be on the way. If the bears, however, were to find inspiration, well, we can see that if we continue to consolidate over, we're going to be fine. It would be if we were to drift lower here, start finding some of these other areas of price support and maybe giving up that kind of steep upside trend, well, we might start coming back into some other areas of price support. Worry would probably start to pick up if we were to break down below this area. Let's take a look at our VIX. Our VIX continuing to show no fear at all. And one of the things I'm going to have to start talking about is when we're like this in the market, we're getting that bubble kind of idea going on here in the big tech giants. And when we start getting that, we do have to start worrying about complacency, because the chase is on. And if, as you can see, dropping down in here, we could drop right down into this area of price support if that continues. But remember, as we continue to push lower and lower here and our PE ratios stretch higher and higher, we've had some pretty interesting divergences show up in the market. So we'll want to watch that carefully here, because we could see a little bit of complacency coming in. And when we do get complacency, we can get that big reverse in the market sometimes, not always. We can stay complacent for a long period of time. And remember, the market is very focused on the idea of the Fed likely cutting rates, not this week, but next week, and the hopefulness of a Santa Claus rally continuing. So we may continue to keep this kind of complacent, just push more money into the market kind of thing. But watch carefully. If it does snap for some reason, it can move quickly south, and we'll want to be careful and have a plan to protect ourselves if that were the case. Now let's take a look at our T2122, which is the 4-week new high, new low ratio. And here's the real interesting thing that we've got going on in the market right now. We're seeing the SPY, the QQQ, just continuing to press record highs. The diamonds are very elevated. And yet at the same time, the majority of stocks are not enjoying that upside rally. We've got the 4-week new high, new low ratio, and we have been coming back as we've been setting new record highs almost on a daily basis in the SPY and QQQ. The majority of stocks are not enjoying that rally. So we've got this major divergence going on here in the market, where the SPY and the QQQ would look something like this, very elevated above if we overlaid them over the T2122. Now, that being said, drawing down like this here in the T21-22, we might find that bit of inspiration on the bullish side and start picking this back up. It could begin at any time, so watch that carefully here in T21-22. But remember, we still have plenty of downside opportunity if those bears find any reason for inspiration in that chart. Let's take a look at our T21-08, and here's a similar situation here. While we've been seeing new record highs in the SPY and QQQ, a major divergence here with the percentage of stocks above the 40-day moving average, we are continuing to see that pullback here in T21-08. We're coming into that 50% area, so I wouldn't worry about this yet. We've got some support down in here, so it may just be this pullback along this area, and we might find that bullish energy in here soon and push right back higher. But you want to watch that closely if we were to drift down below that 50%. Remember, 50% of the stocks below their 40-day moving average would probably raise a little bit of concern. And then if we take a look at our T21-07, once again, while we're setting new record highs in the SPY and the QQQ, our T21-07 has been pulling back. So the percentage of stocks above the 200 also easing. We get that quite a divergence here in the market. And we'll want to watch this carefully. You can see on Friday we tried to hook this just a little bit, which might mean those bulls might have something in here to start pushing this back on higher to test some of these resistance levels in the chart. Kind of keep in mind that if we really push up here toward these mid 65 areas in T21-07, we're an extreme overbought situation here in the market. We might catch this price support in here, and you will want to keep in mind that bulls are still largely in control here because we're well above 50%. So you gotta kind of temper this look of well, what's this big divergence going on? Well, maybe it's just a resting pattern in the market that we need a little bit of break. And then if we take a look at T21-01, well, T21-01 has had that breadth declining here in the market as we're hitting new record highs. That always makes me uncomfortable, like something is about ready to break. But the good news here is on Friday we saw T21-01 kind of hook over to the upside. Might give us a little bit of hope that we can find some bullish inspiration and see that breadth expand out, kind of holding on to this upside trend. If, however, that breadth doesn't come back in and we see weakness show up yet again today and we break that upside trend, I think that concern only grows about this divergence that we're seeing in this high correlation where all the money is flowing into those AI giants. So watch that carefully. Now let's take a look at our economic calendar today. And our economic calendar, well, we're pretty light here on economic data today. We've got stories coming in. You can see they're looking for a consensus is looking for a 0.1. That would be up from a negative 0.2 last time, so that would be an improvement. Keep a close eye on that in wholesale prices. Treasury buyback announcements going on again. We've got bond auctions and a 20-year buyback result later on the day. So not much in that economic data here today. But as we progress, notice Tuesday is also quite light. We've got productivity and costs and FIB, small business optimism number. But then we're going to get into the heavy hitters for the week. We've got CPI coming in here on Wednesday. We're going to get the PPI reading on Thursday. I would expect this could be the catalyst in here, whether we're going to maintain the bullishness or see a little bit of bearishness coming into the market. And Friday is also extremely light this week in economic data. Now we're also seeing the Fed in the blackout period where they can't say anything. So no Fed talk this week. As the following week we're going to be into the FOMC meeting. So keep a close eye there. Now, if we take a look at our earnings calendar here for today, our earnings calendar pretty light this morning. The really only notable that I've got for this morning would be Momo here. Keep an eye on that Chinese issue company, so watch that carefully, pushing a little higher low, showing some bullishness on its report this morning. Keep an eye on that. This afternoon, however, we do have some notables in here that can move the market. Take a look at, we've got AI that will be reporting. Of course, anything that says AI is going to be highly anticipated and could be a big potential mover here this afternoon. We're going to hear from BRZE. We're going to hear from Casey's General Stores. We've got Mongo in here, MDB. Keep an eye on that. Oracle will be reporting this afternoon. Of course, that will be very important for the market as well. Oracle's been moving up in anticipation of those earnings. We've got PHR reporting this afternoon. MTN, Vail Resorts. We've got Toll Brothers that will be reporting this afternoon. And we've got, whoops, well, I can't spell it, I guess. There we go. There it is, finally. YEXT will be reporting this afternoon as well. So keep an eye on this very, very bullish upside trend. Let's take a look at some stocks that could be setting up for today. But before we do that, everyone, if you could do me that quick favor, if this is the first time you've seen these videos, if you could please click that subscribe button on YouTube. Also click that bell icon when it pops up so you'll be notified every time I post a video. And if you find these videos to be useful or helpful, if you could do me that favor, if you could click that thumbs up button and leave a brief comment, that helps the channel to continue to grow. Thank you so much for everyone who does do that. That brief comment can even be an emoji in there. Helps trigger the algorithm saying, oh, people are responding to this video, and so they share this video to more folks out there in the world. So thank you everyone who does take the time to do that. I truly appreciate it. Let's take a look at some of these stocks that could be setting up. And remember, everyone, these aren't recommendations to buy or sell any security. You need to do your own due diligence. Be very, very careful in this market, and remember that anything is possible from this stretch position. So watch carefully and make sure you have a plan to protect yourself if those sellers decide to show up in some way. Let's take a look at some of these stocks. Take a look at Pinterest. Pinterest has been moving up in this nice little upside trend. We broke through this resistance here in the chart. We're just resting in a nice comfortable pattern in here. I would watch this resting pattern in here and look for that next opportunity for that to stretch on higher, at least up here to maybe fill the gap and possibly even break through resistance up here. If we look at this chart, we've got a very interesting basing pattern, and breaking on through could be very, very bullish for it. If we take a look at Etsy, Etsy has been having a similar situation, breaking through the downtrend, showing some bullishness here in the market, stretching on through, breaking above this basing pattern in here. Look for that little bit of rest in here, maybe that next opportunity. Keeping in mind that this is kind of a steep rally. It may go here early, but if we continue to extend these really steep rallies, they usually are short-lived, so watch that carefully. It may have to rest a little bit more in here on Etsy before it's ready to go, but keep an eye on that. Take a look at Alcoa. Now, Alcoa was really setting up and looking pretty good here, but man, Friday, it just got hit on the head and dropped below this trend in here. So Alcoa, I'm going to have to start watching this closely now. So any rally back up here that runs into resistance, I would be watching for that potential fade over for the short, unless it can get back up here and prove to hold. So watch that carefully here in Alcoa. Take a look at Cisco. I think Cisco is just looking beautiful in here. This nice little resting pattern in here, very low risk potential entry point. If we could see some buyers stepping up in here, every reason to believe that could continue to extend on higher, so watch that closely. And remember, we've got that Oracle report this afternoon, and perhaps that provides the inspiration here for something like Cisco to move on higher, so watch that carefully as this reports today. If we take a look at some of the energy sector, boy, I got to tell you, energy has had a really tough run here lately, and I would be watching some of these for any kind of a bounce back, up in here into these trending resistance areas in the chart. I would be looking for that potential failure here, and you can see in these charts that well, it wouldn't take a whole lot to push this off the cliff. There's that downtrend that I'm talking about. This is the resistance area that I'm talking about up in here. So any rally up into that area, any bounce back, I would be looking for that potential of a short. If we take a look at stocks like ExxonMobil, last week gave up some major support areas here in the chart. So now any kind of consolidation over or bounce back up, I think sets up that next opportunity to the downside. Unfortunately, there's a lot of these stocks looking on that short side, despite the cheapness that we're seeing in those fuel prices. So watch carefully. Take a look at stocks like Procter & Gamble. Now, Procter & Gamble had a major run to the upside, and this is one of those examples of something that just extends too far too fast. We get that excitement, we chase it up, and then the hard pullback can occur. I'm not sure that this is going to just continue to fall. I would watch this area of price support right in here, see if that can hold in this area, and then maybe we can start to turn back around and come back to the upside, but watch that closely. Other stocks out there, Siri has been looking really good, pushing up here in the market, kind of trying to break through some resistance here. Get out of this big basing pattern, look for that next upside in here. When we take a look at some of the retail, my goodness, we have really pushed Costco way up here. I would look for a rest or consolidation in here. I'd be careful on these stocks. Again, these extensions that we're seeing are getting a bit on the extreme side. Costco, I must say the same for Walmart, but I still won't rule out that possibility that Walmart could continue to push right on up here and see 100 before it pulls back. But watch that carefully here. These extensions are getting pretty extreme, and if they start to pull back, the sellers will likely run for the door all at once. So be careful there. If we take a look at other places here in the market, I've been watching some areas here on these drug makers. Now, BMY is one of the strongest of the drug makers out there. It's been resting in this consolidation. Many of them sold off strongly, but they're starting to bounce back up here. So watch carefully here on BMI, BMY being one of the strongest. If those bulls can find inspiration in here, we might find a way out of this to some more upside in BMY, because we're seeing stocks like Merck that were just strongly sold off starting to come around out of this bottom, and that possibility that we could push right on through this big old downtrend here in the chart. Moderna doing the same kind of thing, trying to push up, so watch those carefully. They may be trying to come around, relieve some of those pressures that we've been seeing based on anticipation of what the next administration might do. Let's take a look at CRWD, continuing to show a very, very bullish chart, continuing to run in this upside trend. We're resting here the last couple 3 days, resting in here. Look for that next opportunity if those bulls can come around here in the market. And right now, I think there's every reason to believe that that is possible. If we take a look at TWLO, TWLO is a very strong upside run. Again, maybe getting a little steep in this move, might need a little bit of rest, but it's one that you definitely want to be paying attention to, because strong stocks can continue to make new record highs. Take a look at some of the telecommunication stock in here. TMUS, I think, is looking really good. Broke through this resistance and now resting back to trend. Look for some inspiration here on that one to push on higher. Now, I have a little bit of a bias here on AT&T because I am holding this as a long-term trend and got a nice profit in it. That's continuing to look good. And I would keep an eye on some of these pay systems out there. PayPal continuing to look strong, pushing to the upside here. Again, I have a bias on this. I have a beautiful profit in here. I think it's over 25% on the stock itself, not just options in this one, and looking really strong. And the other one in here is SQ. SQ just been in a beautiful upside move. I'm looking at 100 up here, could potentially put a cap on it, and it might need some rest in here. If it does pop through there, though, I'm going to be a happy guy because I've sold the 100 strike calls against it, and I would love them to call me away from this big extended move to the upside. So there's a few stocks for you to look at today. I'm running the video a little bit long. Thanks so much for being here. I truly appreciate it. I want to wish you all the very best today, and I'll see you right back here bright and early Tuesday morning. Take care, everyone, and have a profitable day.